Hello everybody and welcome to today's review of Little Women. It is the new film directed by Greta Gerwig, starring Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh, Eliza Scanlen, Laura Dern, Timothée Chalamet, Tracy Letts, Chris Cooper. Oh, this movie has so many people in it. So I went into this movie knowing absolutely nothing about Little Women. I never read the novel. I never saw any of the previous adaptations. Never saw the Katharine Hepburn one or the Winona Ryder one. I did catch 5 to 10 minutes of the PBS version of it. From that, I got a general gist of what the story was about. It takes place in the 1860s. And centers on the March family, which consists of a husband, a wife, and their 4 daughters. The husband is off fighting in the Civil War, while the wife and the 4 daughters are left to fend for themselves. So they have to earn their own money, and at that time, it was very hard to be a woman. You could not get a job with an income that, equals that of a man. And they were only thought of as property. They were good for only marriage and giving birth. However, they had no ownership of anything. Not their own wage and not even their own children. So it was a very tough time to be a woman. This story shows the perspectives of these 4 girls, Amy, Beth, Jo, and Meg, who choose how to respond to the expectations of a woman in that time period. There's Jo, played by Saoirse Ronan. She is the tomboy of the family. She wants to become a great writer. She doesn't want to just get married and have kids. She wants to make it out in the world on her own terms. And Saoirse Ronan was well cast in this film. She's just a natural at it. She displays so much strength and so much spunk, and yet so much vulnerability. She knows how women are looked down on by men, that they're only good for love. And she feels like she has so much more to offer. She has a mind, she has creativity, and she wants to share that with the world. She doesn't just want a man in her life, while at the same time, she does want a man in her life. It's like saying, I don't want this. I'm so sick of people telling me what I should want. But I actually do want it. That whole conflict within her was very intriguing throughout the whole film. And as for the other sisters, like Meg, played by Emma Watson, she has a different attitude. She's actually okay with being looked at as only the housewife, but she's not without her own dreams. I mean, there is one scene that she has where she goes to a party and she's like, I want this for myself. Let me be this way tonight because I know after this, I'm never gonna have this experience again. It kind of adds to how unfair life can be for a woman at that time. And then there's Florence Pugh's character, Amy. Just like Jo, who wants to be a great writer, Amy wants to become an artist as well, a painter. But like so many of her sisters, she's only encouraged to marry a wealthy man because that is how a woman is supposed to survive in that kind of world. And while she tries at what she wants, she realizes that maybe that is the only way she can survive. Florence Pugh was by far my favorite actor in this movie. I love how strong and confident that she starts out, and yet beneath the surface, she harbors so much resentment and sadness. Florence Pugh also has probably the best monologue in the movie. The rivalry between these 2 sisters was also very compelling to watch. Amy was always jealous of how Jo excelled at everything, and then when she tries for herself, she fails. So now Amy is just trying to grab what she can, knowing that she deserves more, but she'll settle for anything. Yes, they're jealous of each other, but they're still sisters. They love each other. But at the end, the tables are turned, and just where these characters end up, it feels like fate. Because it is that well written. Because of how they acted, how they treated one another, it feels like these characters get their just rewards. It's like karma. Unfortunately, the 4th sister, Beth, does not have a lot to do in this film. That's not to say that she isn't important. Every time she is mentioned or she appears in the film, she serves as a kind of reminder of like a more innocent and gentle nature. And it always puts people into a different perspective. I have to say, Greta Gerwig is a master at telling a coming-of-age story. And what I mean by that is that you take a character, they start off a certain way, but over time, as they grow and progress, they change. They learn more about life and about themselves, and they walk out at the end of the story enlightened. ready to tackle the world as an adult. It was already evident in her last film, Lady Bird, in which you have this character start out a certain way, kind of immature and selfish. She wants to break away from her middle working class family who lives in a small town and travel to the big city and explore, fulfill big dreams and ambitions. And by the end of the film, she realizes that what she has really isn't all that bad. In fact, those things are what define her. And those themes are very similar to Little Women. And this film also uses the time jump device, which I think was used brilliantly. Because at one moment you see how the girls acted and behaved towards one another when they're young. And then you cut to maybe, I think 6 years later, it's a totally different picture. When you see the contrast side to side, it's very interesting to see how life changes a person. As we see them like years and years later, they are more serious, less energetic, and that's where I saw the transformation. They've really developed into adults, and they left childhood behind. Again, I think that shows how Greta Gerwig can be a great filmmaker when it comes to coming-of-age stories. I also love how this movie is shot. Steven Spielberg actually convinced Greta Gerwig to shoot this movie using film and not digital. And I think that was a smart choice because this is based on a classic novel, so filming it with film kind of gave it that retro feel. Very appropriate to this kind of classic tale. The only thing that bothered me was that in certain shots, the tops of people's heads were cut off. I can only hope that it was the fault of the projector and not the camera person. Now, there are some issues that I had with this movie. My biggest issue with it was Timothée Chalamet. I really don't care much for Timothée Chalamet. I find him to be a bit of an overrated actor and a one-trick pony. Every single movie I've seen him in, he's always the same. This good-looking, very mopey, depressed guy that all the ladies just fall for some reason. And he plays the same thing in this movie. He's also very immature. And I just could not get behind this character at all. In the movie, Timothée plays Theodore Lawrence, Laurie as the girls call him, and he starts off with a crush on Saoirse Ronan's character Jo. He's always trying to win her love over, but then there are other times when I felt like his character was hitting on the other girls. There was even a moment where it seemed like he was flirting with Emma Watson's character, and I was so confused because, wait a minute, don't you have a crush on Jo? Is this The Bachelor? Is he falling in love with all these different women, but there's like no real sincerity to it? But who he ended up with, which I'm not telling you by the way, spoiler-free review, I found that there was no call for it whatsoever. I was like, where did this come from? I knew that the girl loved him, but I never knew that he had those feelings for her. It just felt very forced and way out of left field for me. Also, I feel like they had nothing in common. They just felt like two different people to me. Also, I had a huge problem with the first half of the entire movie, particularly how they were acting. You could tell by watching this movie that Greta Gerwig has some experience in theater because when I watched these actors perform, it was like they were on stage. Like as soon as they said one line, immediately they went to the next line as if it was all predetermined. They knew exactly what to say, like it was all scripted. It is scripted, but the actors are not supposed to show it. It felt like there was no time to process what each person was giving the other. The tempo was just way too fast. It's something that you would expect from a stage performance, but not on film. It's only when the children have a deep conversation with the adults that all of a sudden the tempo seems to slow down. Like when Jo has a moment with Aunt Marge, played by Meryl Streep. That was the first time that the tempo really slowed down and they were actually taking their time with this scene. And then when Beth has a moment with Chris Cooper's character, again, the same thing. Things start to slow down and we were totally in the moment. So yeah, like I said, this is not a perfect movie, especially the first half, but the last half gave me a lot of feels. I got very emotional at the end of this movie. I was just amazed at how much these characters have grown, and I found this to be a very charming and delightful film. It's shot in a style that I feel like was very loyal to the source material, with a hint of modernism to throw in the mix to make it more relevant to today's audience, which is good because not a lot of people like to go see, period pieces. I enjoyed this movie. I'm very glad I saw it. I'm gonna give it an A-. Thank you for watching my video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to see you again next time.